Good morning, everyone.
Good
My name
morning,
is
Matt.
Matthew Shinneman, and I am the Director of Lifespan Faith Development here at UUCY. If you saw the order of service, you would see that the Time for All Ages today is entitled How Coyote Lost His Music, Songs, Dance, Life. And I was planning on telling this story, and it is a story about how Coyote thought he was better than everyone, and he was perfect, and everyone else was strange, and he didn't need anyone else. But I'm not going to tell that story this morning. And here's why. The story appeared in an anthology, a collection of stories from 1997 entitled Our 7 Principles in Story and Verse, and it was written by Kenneth Collier. And in the intro to this book, Collier writes that a lot of the stories were influenced by idioms from Native Americans and from Africans. But all of the stories are his own. Now, as I mentioned, this book was from 1997, 24 years ago. We as a community, as a people, as a country, as a world, have learned a lot in 24 years. We no longer take stories from other cultures and pass them along as if they are our own. To be in relationship, to be in covenant as we as a people, a faith tradition so heavily reliant on the notion of covenant and relationship. We must recognize that relationship is a two-way street. I've said it before, I will say it again.
Pass on
We are
anything
covenant
Jesus said,
making,
because he was Hebrew
covenant
2,000 years
breaking,
ago.
Yeah, I
covenant
got the
remaking
real problem.
people. We are not perfect by any means, but we do strive to be in and to cultivate relationships. And that requires us to have responsibility to those we are in relationship with. We do not take stories in order to promote ourselves, but rather to promote and uphold those traditions. So I'm not going to tell the story today. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it is okay to pass along a Native American story as if it is my own. And I want you all to understand why we, as a faith, should not ever do that. Cultivating relationship, being in relationship, honoring covenant, that is who we are as a people. And it's even more important so on this weekend, when in many places, Monday is still known as Columbus Day. I won't call it that anymore. It is Indigenous Peoples Day, and we will honor those natives who were here. They were here on this land before it was discovered. And we will honor that as a faith. Thank you.
Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Today's reading is a poem by Joe Harjo titled For Calling the Spirit Back from Wandering Earth wandering the earth in its human feet. Joy Harjo is the current poet laureate of the United States and is a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation. For calling the spirit back from wandering the earth in its human feet. Put down that bag of potato chips, that white bread, that bottle of pop. Turn off that cell phone, computer, and remote control. Open the door, then close it behind you. Take a breath offered by friendly winds. They travel the earth, gathering essences of plants to clean. Give it back with gratitude. If you sing, it will give your spirit lift to fly to the stars' ears and back. Acknowledge this earth who has cared for you since you were a dream planting itself precisely within your parents' desire. Let your moccasin feet take you to the encampment of the guardians who have known you before time, who will be there after time. They sit before the fire that has been there without time. Let the earth stabilize your post-colonial insecure jitters. Be respectful of the small insects, birds, and animal people who accompany you. Ask their forgiveness for the harm we humans have brought down upon them. Don't worry. The heart knows the way, though there may be high-rises, interstates, checkpoints, armed soldiers, massacres, wars, and those who will despise you because they despise themselves. The journey might take you a few hours, a day, a year, a few years, 100, 1,000, or even more. Watch your mind. Without training, it might run away and leave your heart for the immense human feast set by the thieves of time. Do not hold regrets. When you find your way to the circle, to the fire kept burning by the keepers of your soul, you will be welcomed. You must clean yourself with cedar sage or other healing plant. Cut the ties you have to failure and shame. Let go the pain you are holding in your mind, your shoulders, your heart, all the way to your feet. Let go the pain of your ancestors to make way for those who are heading in our direction. Ask for forgiveness. Call upon the help of those who love you. These helpers take many forms: animal, element, bird, angel, saint, stone, or ancestor. Call your spirit back. It may be caught in corners and creases of shame, judgment, and human abuse. You must call in a way that your spirit will want to return. Speak to it as you would to a beloved child. Welcome your spirit back from its wandering. It may return in pieces, in tatters. Gather them together. They will be happy to be found after being lost for so long. Your spirit will need to sleep a while after it is bathed and given clean clothes. Now, you can have a party. Invite everyone you know who loves and supports you. Keep room for those who have no place else to go. Make a giveaway, and remember, keep the speeches short. Then you must do this. Help the next person find their way through the dark.
Thank you. Let the earth stabilize your post-colonial insecure jitters. The first time I read this poem by Joy Harjo, read beautifully for us today by Joanne, I laughed out loud at that line. Post-colonial jitters, that's great. And then I took a moment to think about what it meant for me, a middle-class, middle-aged white woman, to be invited into the laughter and the tears, the joy and the sorrow expressed in this lovely poem written by our poet laureate and a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation. As many of you may remember, in July of 2020, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that most of the eastern half of the state of Oklahoma, including the city of Tulsa, is in fact still Muskogee Creek Reservation land. In the majority opinion issued by the Supreme Court, Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote, "Today we are asked whether the land these treaties promised remains an Indian reservation for purposes of federal criminal law. Because Congress has not said otherwise, we hold the government to its word." We hold the government to its word. This statement feels exceptional in this case because of the number of times that the government did not hold to its word, the number of promises made and broken, the number of treaties signed and ignored. In addition to being Muskogee Creek land, the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma, is the location of the world's largest brick-and-mortar Unitarian Universalist congregation, All Souls Tulsa. With over 2,000 members, All Souls shines as a beacon of liberal faith in a deeply conservative area. In some ways, its large numbers stem from, as their lead minister has been known to say, being the only game in town for those who feel a discomfort with the conservative Christian churches that dominate the religious landscape of eastern Oklahoma. I laughed when I read the line, "Let the earth stabilize your post-colonial insecure jitters," and then I thought seriously about my own post-colonial insecure jitters. My own nervousness in the face of all the history that I did not learn for so long, all about the land and places I love that I was not told and did not investigate for myself for many years. In the fall of 2018, I traveled to Tulsa as part of a seminary class titled Multiracial Congregations and Faith Formation. This class was conceived of and co-taught by Dr. Mark Hicks, a brilliant religious educator and also the driving force behind the beloved Conversations curriculum, as well as being an Oklahoma native. While we were in Tulsa, we learned about the history of All Souls and the role that some of the founders of that esteemed congregation played in the Tulsa Race Massacre, which happened 100 years ago in May of 1921. It was a hard class. The history of racism, not just in America, not just in Tulsa, but in the history of our own religious tradition, is challenging to confront and learn about. And as students aspiring to be leaders in this faith, we gathered, white, Black, Native American of many genders, to ask ourselves and each other hard questions. Part of the class was a bus tour of Tulsa. We visited sites important to the history of All Souls, the history of the Tulsa Massacre, and we ended at a large plot of open land adjacent to town and near several large highways. This, we were told, is the land where the new church building would be constructed. All Souls wanted to move back into downtown Tulsa, not out in the wealthier suburbs where it had moved in 1957. The land was near the historic Greenwood District, site of the 1921 massacre, and it was also part of the land at the end of the Trail of Tears, a massive program of forced displacement of Native peoples from their homes in the Deep South into the Western Territories. Not a time when the government held to its word. Not a time when the inherent worth and dignity of all people was honored. So when I first started really sitting with today's text, with Joy Harjo's beautiful words, I felt ashamed. But then the poet herself chided me. She invited me back. Call your spirit back. It may be caught in corners and creases of shame, judgment, and human abuse. This world can be so overwhelming, even when we focus outside of our own lives, when we are able to do so, to try to take in a broader and deeper understanding of how things are and how they came to be this way. We can be stunned into feelings of shame and judgment. Tomorrow is the federally observed holiday of Columbus Day. On Friday, President Biden issued the first ever presidential proclamation of Indigenous Peoples Day, also occurring tomorrow, October 11th. The concurrence of these two observances and how we choose to tell the complicated, many-layered story of this nation matters. The truth of the impact of the arrival of Christopher Columbus's expedition cannot be denied, even as the ways we explore, struggle with, and learn about that impact may differ. And so also must the lives and histories and truths of those impacted by colonialism and the reach of empire be considered in their many and varied ways. These are the stories we tell about ourselves. They are important, and so learning to stay with them is important, even as they open and shift. For some of us, this work may bring us feelings of shame. For some of us, this work may bring us feelings of anger. For some of us, this work may bring us feelings of sadness, of overwhelm, of this is just too big. And for most of us, it is probably a combination of these things. Right before the invitation to call our spirits back, the poet gently admonishes us, the readers. Ask for forgiveness. Call upon the help of those who love you. These helpers take many forms: animal, element, bird, angel, saint, stone, and ancestor. Ask for forgiveness. And in the very next line, the very next breath, ask for help. And then we are given a list of suggestions, of helpers, of those many places we may get back in touch with our wandering spirit. Angel or saint, stone or ancestor, any living being or element in the world that will be of comfort to you. Part of the work we do when we investigate our own history, when we learn things that upset our prior understanding of a history on a national level, a community level, a family, or a personal level, part of that is the establishment of a relationship with our own ancestors. Not just our blood relation ancestors, but those whose lives help shape the path that we take today. When I was in Tulsa, I was invited into a relationship with some complicated Unitarians who are my ancestors in faith. And during seminary, I met many ancestors as I explored the history of this faith that I came to in adulthood. One of those ancestors changed my understanding of the ground that I call home. Don Speed Smith Goodloe was the first Black person to graduate from Meadville Theological School in Meadville, Pennsylvania, the Unitarian seminary that later merged with Universalist Lombard College to create the seminary I graduated from, Meadville Lombard Theological School. Don Goodloe was told when he enrolled that he was welcome, but he was unlikely to find work in ministry. No Unitarian church at the time had called a Black minister. Goodloe graduated from Meadville in 1906 and continued on his career path of teaching, knowing the work of ministry was still unavailable to him. In 1911, Don Goodloe accepted a position as principal of the Maryland Normal and Industrial School at Bowie for the training of colored youth, also known as Maryland State Normal School No. 3. This is in my hometown of Bowie, Maryland, and Maryland Normal School No. 3 is now Bowie State University on the National Register of Historically Black Colleges and Universities. The school built a home for Don and his wife and family, and I live almost exactly 2 miles south of that home today. When I was a child living in Bowie, I knew none of this history. In the 1970s and 1980s, when I was growing up, Bowie was almost entirely white, even as the rest of Prince George's County was majority Black, with many residents of the District of Columbia seeking more suburban living by moving just to the east. I was taught a lot about the history of thoroughbred horse racing in the United States because it was centered in Bowie, but I was not taught about the enslaved persons who worked the land where the horses were kept and trained. My church of my youth, the faith community I was raised in, is on Jesuit land that first housed a plantation which was run and maintained by enslaved people. My father is buried in the historic cemetery outside the chapel dating from 1741, and his grave is less than 100 feet from the graves of enslaved persons. This summer, I walked the 2 miles north to Don Goodloe's house as a kind of pilgrimage. When I was there, I thought about how I had just graduated from Meadville Lombard and how I wished that I had known earlier about him and his history on this land, which was also my land, which has also been the land of countless others before the both of us, whose stories are now forgotten. The lands in Bowie that are both mine and Don Goodloe's and countless others are also the lands of the Piscataway peoples and the Anacostan peoples. Just as the land here, the beloved land where our sanctuary resides, is the land of the Susquehannock people. Pulling apart the layers of history, learning and unlearning about what has gone before, challenging ourselves and our knowledge and our assumptions is hard work. Not one of us arrived where we are, has come to the land where we are, has become the person we are without struggle. And when we do earnest work to engage empathetically with other people with different struggles, it can be heartbreaking. The question is, will your heart be broken into pieces that cannot be put back together, or will it be broken wide open and expand its capacity to love? This prophetic poem, again, has an invitation for us. Call those broken parts back if you can. Your spirit may feel trapped elsewhere. You may feel apart from that which is most important to you. Let the earth stabilize you. Ask for forgiveness. Ask for help. And don't worry. The heart knows the way, though there may be high-rises, interstates, checkpoints, armed soldiers, massacres, wars, and those who will despise you because they despise themselves. We will never fully know the struggles of others, but that does not release us from the work of trying to learn and understand. That calls us into love. And Cornel West tells us that justice is what love looks like in public. And Joy Harjo also points the way to the next steps. When our own spirit has come back, has been bathed, rested, and given clean clothes, when we have found a place of comfort and found ourselves renewed, then our path is clear. She writes, then you must do this. Help the next person find their way through the dark. This is the 5th time I've said, this is hard work. This is heart work. This is the work our faith calls us to do. Settle, heal, apologize, ask for help, and then take up the work of justice, helping the next person and the next. So may it be. Mindful also of the poet's exhortation to keep the speeches short, I'll now ask you to turn your hearts back to the language of spirit. Please join in from home while remaining muted with our hymn, When the Spirit Says Do.
To do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you gotta sing. Oh Lord, you gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. When the Spirit says laugh, you got to laugh. Oh Lord, you got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. 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 You got to show when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
It is the practice of this congregation to share each week's offering with an organization serving our community that upholds our values. We use Share the Plate to honor our commitment to service to our local community through these generous donations to local partners. October's Share the Plate recipient is York Fresh Food Farms. A healthy diet is essential to overall health and strongly influences health outcomes. Access to and consumption of fresh produce is at the core of combating chronic diet-related disease and making our community healthier. York Fresh Food Farms is on the front lines of increasing access to fresh, healthy food in the city of York. The nonprofit organization was created to serve low-income families where food insecurity is the greatest. Their vegetables are grown organically and are affordably priced, and they are growing food in York City for York City.
Well, York Fresh Food Farms, to me, came from an idea and a love of York City. There was a need in this community for healthy food access. For those who depended upon public transportation or simply walking, we provided.
No matter how many people show up, no matter who shows up, we just want to connect and tell people about what we have to offer and what we're doing.
Hold on.
For me, it's a missional thing. I love people. We love what we do, and we want to do more of it. We love York City.
Please join in at home as we speak our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We extinguish the chalice here, so that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. May it guide your way until we are together again.
We have taken the time to gather. We have taken the time to call our spirits gently back. And we are ready to apologize, to ask for help, and to engage in the work of this world with tender compassion and fierce love. Take up the flame of faith in your heart so that it may light your way.
They're putting out the chalice.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.